Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and this is going to be a brief little review of Marvel's Superior Spider-Man, issue number 5, written by Dan Slott, with art primarily by Giuseppe Camuncoli, John Dell, Edgar Delgado, and Antonio Fabella, and lettering by Chris Eliopoulos. And it's at this point I'm beginning to wonder if Marvel is continuing to add names to the book just to see whether or not I'm willing to mention and attempt pronouncing all of them. But of course, I jest. In spite of the somewhat spectacular last-page reveal at the end of issue number 4, issue number 5 follows up with the Massacre storyline. That is to say, Massacre, the villain who's escaped the Nut House and gone on a killing spree involving a Burger Town restaurant, is who we're following from the get-go. He pays a visit to CEO of Fizzy Cola and by degrees the Burger Town chain itself, Miranda Pullman, and offers her for the startling sum of $12 million to walk out into a busy New York street and open fire on random pedestrians while wearing a t-shirt bearing the logo of her competitors. This being largely as a result of her seemingly only being interested in the bad press and stock plummeting caused by Massacre's earlier killing spree at one of her restaurants. Spider-Man, that is Doc Ock inhabiting Peter Parker's body, in case you haven't caught up by now, is on the case of tracking Massacre down, as he's made it somewhat of a personal vendetta that he intends to carry out, where Pete once failed as he sees it. Utilizing the talents of Uatu Jackson, a friend and co-worker of Peter's at Horizon Labs, he narrows the search by using a facial recognition program that he's linked to his hundreds of city-roving spider bots. And while this program is running, to the spiritual presence of Peter's dismay, Ock once again sidelines his spidery duties that he's meant to perform to follow up on a card that was anonymously placed into his hand last issue, once he's signed back into college to earn his doctorate. This card brings him to Anna Maria Marconi, a tutor of chemistry and physics who also happens to be a vivacious little person and gourmet chef of Italian cuisine. Ock's understandably thrown for a loop at first, but ends up impressing upon her that he's no slouch in the physics department either, leaving Anna Maria equally thrown for a loop and only able to gift him a homemade pinolata for dessert as a thank you. As a result of which, Peter has the secondary aspect of Ock's softening up his body with fatty garbage to worry about, aside from his primary issue of Ock's inhabiting his body in the first place and wreaking havoc with it as the superior wall crawler. Once Uatu's facial recognition program snags Massacre's visage, heading into Grand Central Station, as it were, Ock again sidelines away from the main objective, only this time it's still ultimately related to the case. Here Ock shows himself to be living up to the superior title, as he's not only called in the NYPD to keep Massacre occupied, but he's also pieced together that, at an alternate location, Massacre is likely holding other hostages. This proves to be true, and Ock's Spidey effectively saves them all. The final showdown between Ock and Massacre is a pretty intense one as well, as Massacre has already begun opening fire and killing cops on the scene. Ock's just barely able to save a kid caught in the crossfire, a suggestion thrown his way unbeknownst to him by Peter's presence. But Ock follows this up by grabbing one of the downed officer's weapons and firing it at Massacre. This first shot nails Massacre in the shoulder, effectively grounding him. And here, Octavius is now weighing in his mind the villain that he once was, taking lives with tentacles, robots, lasers, and death traps. He looks at the use of a firearm as being beneath him, yet still does it seem to suit his purpose in correcting the mistake, again as he sees it, that Peter once made in letting Marcus Lyman, the man also known as Massacre, be brought in alive. He begs aloud to know what he should do with Massacre, as every impulse he has is telling him to end the criminal's life once and for all. And the victims on the scene are only too glad to cheer Spider-Man on in taking it. Somewhat of a shocking predicament, I have to say. The superior Spider-Man takes a second shot, though it's one we're left to only assume the outcome of. He is proclaimed a hero by the likes of the victims, the police, and even J. Jonah Jameson. But the story doesn't quite end here, as Ock, being a man well-traveled in the criminal circuit, pays a follow-up visit to the Burger Town CEO, Miranda Pullman, through the use of a pirated television signal and his spider bots. He tells her plainly that he knows of her secret bank accounts, the ones that paid the crazy man to do such crazy things. She pleads her innocence, but is ultimately told she will go to the police and confess or answer to him. And it is here that we see where Peter's Spider-Man understood that with great power comes great responsibility. Ock's now embraced his own wielding of such power, seeing his responsibility as being to watch over everyone and judge them when he must. Dan Slott was all over the pacing of this issue, I have to say, which was altogether flawless as far as I'm concerned. The tension of the entire massacre side of it was well laid in with the quirky sidestep that was the debut of Anna Maria Marconi, as well as the gripping search that unfolds in seeking the criminal massacre and the saving of its alternate hostages, which was just dynamic and bold. Married together with the spectacular art featured in this issue, you truly feel the intensity of Massacre's interactions with Pullman and the biting edge-of-your-seat action that unfolds when he and Superior Spidey throw down. And I have to say I particularly like the cover art depicting Spidey in the wake of that penultimate shot, set through webs as if to say, this really isn't the web slinger we remember anymore. And we're ultimately left with the shock of Ock's web-headed actions seemingly killing Massacre, if the scene is to be taken literally, which Peter would never have done. What unfolds from here I can only begin to wonder, and I find myself eager as ever and even pretty excited to see what's next in the adventures, or perhaps misadventures, of the Superior Spider-Man. And so I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of this issue if you've read it, what you think of the aspect of Ock's Spidey having seemingly now taken a life. Is this something Peter may never be able to live down? That is, if he ever lives again? And otherwise, that'll be it for me on this one. I hope you're all doing well. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.